Salutations, dreamers in dreamland. Welcome to the latest edition of Listen to Me. That's right, Listen to Me, volume 51. And let me tell you something right now. What better way to start off this week, this Monday, the 8th of November. What better way to start off this week than to go over the incredible weekend of boxing we just had this past weekend. And this is the weekend review. Yes, I gave you my weekend picks on Friday, and I went 2 for 2. Dreamers in Dreamland, and, everybody's favorite boxing shaman, yours truly, the Dream. I hate to say I told you so, ha! But I told you so, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but at the end of the day, Mikaea Mayer, she defeated Mikaea Hamadouche in a unanimous decision. Listen, I thought the right fighter won the fight, honestly, but I did believe that some of those judges' scorecards were a little suspect. One of the judges had it a clean sweep, 100-90 for Mikaea Mayer, and that was not the case. This fight was 6 rounds to 4, Mikaea Mayer, maybe 7 rounds to 3, and it could have been scored a draw, maybe. Okay, the fight was close enough to where it may have been 5 rounds to 5, but a realistic, person, a realistic boxing fan, someone watching this fight through, realistic eyes, knows that on the road, a fighter has to do more than at home. And this fight was in Mikaea Mayer's home. This was in Las Vegas. This was in the United States of America. This was under the TopRank banner. And the only female fighter that is exclusively signed to a TopRank contract is Mikaea Mayer. She's their top girl. So for Mikaea Hamadouche to get the victory, she would have to knock out Mikaea Mayer or leave it to where there's really nothing in doubt, to where it's almost a clean sweep in the other way, to where it's 10 rounds to none for Mikaea Hamadouche. Now, that was not the case. This was a close fight, and by all accounts, I felt Mikaea Mayer did enough to win the fight. I felt that she definitely won 6 rounds of the fight. There was a couple of swing rounds in there that could have went either way, but I felt she clearly won the fight and the right fighter won the fight. But the scorecards that read 100-90 and 99-91, that's fucking bullshit. And it takes away from the greatness of the sport of boxing, and it takes away from the integrity of the fight, unfortunately. However, I don't want to take the roses away, and I want to congratulate Mikaea Mayer in her victory. She is now the unified WBO IBF 130-pound women's champion. And right now, being the only 130-pound women's champion that's unified with more than one championship belt, she's the authority at the weight. She has taken, she's taken the reins. She's taken the bull by the horns, and she's basically put a bow in the back of its head. She is the leader in the 130-pound division. So I congratulate her on her victory from Friday. Now, the big fight this past weekend. Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant. Got to congratulate Canelo Alvarez. And, I did predict a knockout in the 9th round, and it took 2 rounds longer than I predicted, but it was the 11th round, and that is when you did see a stoppage. And mark my words, I told, all the dreamers in Dreamland, I told each and every one of you that body work from Canelo Alvarez would pay off as the fight wore on. And what did you see? You saw the body work from Canelo Alvarez paying off as the fight wore on. Yes, just like as I had predicted in my, prediction video, the first 3 rounds, Caleb Plant was going to look slick. He was going to look cool. He was going to look cute. It was going to be a good-looking fight for him in the first 3 rounds. But make no mistake about it, while I had Caleb Plant winning those first 3 rounds, Canelo Alvarez was still, putting money in the bank early. He was banging Caleb Plant to the body every chance he could. At every opportunity Canelo Alvarez had to hit Caleb Plant in the body early on in the fight, even in the rounds that Caleb Plant was winning with his activity and his movement, Canelo Alvarez was still tagging Caleb Plant in the body and putting money in the bank. And he cashed in that money in the bank later on in the fight. Now, as the fight wore on, I did give Caleb Plant the first 3 rounds. I gave Canelo Alvarez the 4th round. I believe I gave Caleb Plant the 5th round. No, I'm sorry, I didn't. I gave Caleb Plant the first 3, and then I gave Canelo Alvarez the next 3. I had it 57-57 after 6 rounds. Okay? So at the half, the fight was even in my opinion. But in my opinion, that was it for Caleb Plant. He didn't do much after that. There was another swing round in there, maybe, but I had Canelo Alvarez winning all the rounds after that until he stopped Caleb Plant. Canelo Alvarez was landing the more effective punches, the heavier punches. He was landing the body punches, and he was landing the punches, to the, in the manner where he's landing clean shots. The cleaner, more powerful punches were definitely delivered by Canelo Alvarez. That's a fact. Caleb Plant was getting cute early. His jab was effective and his movement was effective early. But make no mistake about it, his back was on the ropes a lot. And if your back is on the ropes as the fight wears on, that's not a good sign. And that doesn't dictate ring generalship, and that's not going to win you rounds. Look, activity is nice in a way, movement and jabbing, but who was throwing and landing more punches? Canelo Alvarez. And who was landing more effective punches? Canelo Alvarez. And at the end of the day, in the 11th round, all that money that Canelo Alvarez put in the bank early into the body of Caleb Plant, it paid off in spades. It paid off huge. Jackpot. Boom. Knocked him down. Damn near knocked him through the ropes on the first knockdown. And then on the second knockdown, the same thing. He almost knocked him through the ropes again. And what was the final punch that put Caleb Plant down? A punch to the body. Something else I predicted in my prediction video. So, at the end of the day, I want to congratulate Canelo Alvarez. I want to give him his roses. I want to give him his congratulations for being the first ever 168-pound, 4-belt undisputed champion. The first undisputed champion of any kind at 168 pounds. The super middleweight division, 168 pounds, they've never had an undisputed champion. Now we've got the WBA, WBC, WBO, IBF, Ring Magazine, 168-pound champion of the world. Canelo Alvarez, I want to congratulate. I want to give you, I want to give him his roses. I want to give you your flowers, Canelo. Congratulations. However, I do want to correct myself in something I stated in a previous video. This was not for the lineal status. Unfortunately, the lineal status has been vacant since March 16th, 2016. It was last held by Andre Ward, and it was attained by Andre Ward when he beat Carl Froch. Since then, the lineal status at 168 pounds has been vacant. Now, there have been some talks because, Andre Ward was in the camp of Caleb Plant, giving him some tips. There's been talk that Andre Ward may come back and may want a Canelo Alvarez fight. I don't see that happening. However, if it does, that would definitely be for lineal status. But if Andre Ward stays retired, which I believe he will, I believe they will award the lineal status to Canelo Alvarez at some point. I mean, it's been 5 years. It's been more than 5 years. It's almost 6 years. This coming March, which is a little over 4 months from now, it's going to be 6 years. So when you're looking at 6 years with no lineal status, it's time. It's time for the lineal status to be given. And who better for lineal status to be given to and be awarded to than Canelo Alvarez? I mean, let's face it, Canelo Alvarez is the #1 pound-for-pound boxer in the world. Canelo Alvarez is the cash cow of boxing, the world over, period, bar none. Canelo Alvarez is top dog, and he's the undisputed 168-pound champion. And he picked up all of those titles inside of a year, inside of 11 months. Now, outside of Jermaine Taylor picking them all up from Bernard Hopkins in one night when Bernard Hopkins was defending those championships and he lost a very close decision to Jermaine Taylor, outside of that scenario, nobody has become unified undisputed champion of a weight division inside of 11 months. From having no belts to having them all. No one's done it in that kind of time period. So Canelo Alvarez deserves all the congratulations in the world. 60 fights deep in his professional career, 31 years old, 57-1, 2 draws, 1 loss to Floyd Mayweather Jr., quite possibly the best ever in some people's opinions, one of the greatest of all time, unquestionably. So, Canelo Alvarez is definitely the best of his era, this era in boxing. No question about it. That's a fact. Now, I do want to give congratulations to Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant really, he showed a lot. He showed that, he has what it takes to swim in the ocean with the sharks. He's out of the kiddie pool. He did very well against Canelo Alvarez. he did just about as well as Billy Joe Saunders did. Maybe a little bit better because he lasted longer in the fight. He got to the 11th round. Billy Joe Saunders did not make it that far. However, Billy Joe Saunders did keep the fight in the middle of the ring more. And, Caleb Plant was more on his bicycle. And, Caleb Plant did bounce off the canvas. He was down twice. And, Billy Joe Saunders didn't go down at all. He got his eye socket broken and he quit in the corner. Or his corner stopped it, however you want to call it. But his eye socket was broken. And I'm not saying it's a knock. I'm not disrespecting someone. But he did end the fight of his own admission and his corner's own volition. And his corner man did say that, Billy gave him the, gave him the Iggy, gave him the signal that, all right, that's it, I don't want no more. And his corner bailed him out. That's the story that his own corner has told. And, so did Caleb Plant do a little better than Billy Joe Saunders? Maybe. Did he do better than Callum Smith? Callum Smith, to me, in that fight looked like a survivor, and he got his bicep, broken or whatever it was. So I think that, Caleb Plant did just as good, if not a little bit better than those other two guys at super middleweight, and I want to congratulate him, and I want to give him the respect that he deserves. Leading up to a fight, there's always a lot of animosity, and sometimes guys say things that they don't mean. Guys say things to sell the fight. Guys say controversial things on purpose to add a little salt and pepper to the steak of the fight to get more people, enticed on the sizzling steak that's on the, that's on the grill, the fight. So they'll add a little bit of spice. But Caleb Plant, at the end of the day, I got a lot of respect for that guy. He overcame a lot with the death of his mother and his child, and believe me, burying a child is not something that is to be taken lightly. And, Caleb Plant promised his daughter that he would become a world champion. He did that, and he lost the belts to the greatest boxer of his era. Maybe the greatest boxer in the history of Mexico, in the great history of boxing Mexico. In the great boxing history of Mexico, Canelo Alvarez may be the greatest Mexican boxer ever. One of the greatest in the history of boxing, period. Today, Canelo Alvarez. If Canelo Alvarez never boxed again and retired a full-fledged four-weight division world champion, an undisputed champion at 168 pounds, okay, with one professional loss to one of the greatest fighters in history, Floyd Mayweather Jr. If Canelo Alvarez never boxed again and retired today, his resume would stand up there with anyone's in the history of boxing, and he would be considered one of the greatest fighters of all time if he retired today. So I'm not going to take anything away from what Canelo did. I'm only going to add to it and applaud him. And anybody trying to detract, from what Canelo has proven is a fool and an asshole and is not a real boxing fan. So at the end of the day, Dreamers in Dreamland, everybody's favorite boxing shaman is going to give it to you. He's going to give it to you straight. He's going to give it, he's going to give you the facts. He's going to give you the truth. And the truth is, Canelo Alvarez, he's the man. He's the man today in boxing. He's the top pound-for-pound boxer in the world. He's the cash cow of boxing. And you know what? He's the best fighter of his generation, period, bar none. Now, that's no disrespect to Terence Bud Crawford, who has a big fight coming up with Shawn Porter. So, coming up on November 20th, we're going to have Terry Porter and Jamal Crawford. No, wait, that's not right. Excuse me. We're going to have Shawn Porter and Terence Crawford. That's a joke for all you guys that know old school NBA. Jamal Crawford and Terry Porter. I'm a guy who loves old school NBA basketball. Terry Porter, one of my favorite, players. Jamal Crawford, one of my favorite players. And you know what? To be honest, Terence Crawford is one of my favorite boxers. So it always makes me laugh when I hear Terence Crawford. I think of Terry Porter and Jamal Crawford. So I wanted to throw that out there as a little joke. But the upcoming fight was Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter. It's going to be a big fight, but I'm going to be honest. It's not the scale of the fight that we had this past weekend for the undisputed 168-pound championship. And Terence Crawford is one of the best fighters of his generation, and it's not really his fault, but his resume does not have, the kind of bullet points that Canelo Alvarez resume has. Canelo Alvarez resume, it's got bullet points in 4 different divisions, world champion, 154, 160, 168, 175. How many world champions has Canelo Alvarez beat? How many world champions has Canelo Alvarez been in the ring with, active, reigning, or former world champions? And the answer is more than Terence Crawford. I'm sorry. And Terence Crawford is a 3-division world champion with undisputed at 140. Canelo Alvarez is a 4-division world champion, undisputed at 168. And with more significant big fights, he's a proven pay-per-view success. He's the cash cow of boxing. And he's been in the ring as a professional since 15 years old. Again, I can't stress it to you enough, Dreamers in Dreamland. Everybody's favorite boxing shaman, yours truly, The Dream. I can't tell you enough times. Canelo Alvarez is the best of this generation. Every time he fights, you're going to witness greatness. So I'm going to give you the best advice I can. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Appreciate Canelo Alvarez when he fights. Watch, buy the fight, because in this generation in boxing, there ain't nobody better, brother. So until we meet again, my friends, whether you're a friend, foe, family, or fan, or if you're some other kind of fucking asshole out there, I love you. I love each and every one of you, but not nearly equal. It's just the way it works. I know some of you too well to love you that much. Ha ha! Peace.